पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning session. Morning here and evening in your places. Today we will start with the chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita, which is again very interesting chapter, and actually starts with a question from Arjun. So we will begin with that, and at the end I'll take one question which has been raised to me by some of our colleagues. So I'll take that at the end. So the first verse of chapter 5, the Arjun is asking this question to Lord Krishna. अर्जुन बोले, हे कृष्ण, आप कर्मों के संन्यास की और फिर कर्म योग की प्रशंसा करते हैं, इसलिए इन दोनों में से जो भी उपयुक्त हो उसको मेरे भली भांति निश्चित करके कहिए, जिससे कि मैं कल्याण को प्राप्त हूं. Now this question is somewhat misplaced, because if you see the chapter number 3 and chapter 4, at no stage Lord Krishna says that you go away from the action. He is only talking about not having any expectation, not having any desires, and not to be part of the doer. But he is always emphasizing, do all your actions without any desire, without any expectations. So obviously this is somewhat, we can say difference in the understanding of Arjun and Krishna. This happens to everybody, and this is what happened to Arjun. He thought that when Krishna is saying that you leave aside the doer and you do everything, he thought it is karma sannyas, that you don't do, you leave the actions. But Krishna all the time has been emphasizing, and let me repeat that verse here. This is the verse number 19 of chapter 4. This says like this, जिसके संपूर्ण शास्त्र सम्मत कर्म बिना कामना और संकल्प के होते हैं, तथा जिसके समस्त कर्म ज्ञान रूप अग्नि के द्वारा भस्म हो गए हैं, उस महापुरुष को ज्ञानीजन पंडित कहते हैं. So this is what Krishna has been emphasizing, that don't have desires, don't have expectations, and with the knowledge which you will acquire in the process, all your actions will be completely destroyed. But the action will remain. The action itself will not be destroyed. The outcome of the action will be completely destroyed. So this is what was misunderstood by Arjun, and he thought that he is talking about karma sannyas, that you leave aside the karma and retire as a monk in Himalayas. That is a misunderstanding on the part of Arjuna here. That is my interpretation of this verse. Now, at no stage Krishna advised anybody that you leave life and go and retire in jungles. He has not said that. He has only said that you distance yourself as the doer, that you are not the doer, and don't have any desire or expectations out of the action you are doing, and then you continue to do everything with best of your abilities. That is what Krishna is saying. And in fact, the verse number 24, he again says the same thing, in which is verse number 18 rather, of chapter 4, which is a very profound verse. We discussed that in detail. कि जो मनुष्य कर्म में अकर्म देखता है, so कर्म में अकर्म देखना, we have to see the अकर्म in the कर्म, and अकर्म में कर्म देखता है, वही मनुष्य में बुद्धिमान है. So this is, somewhat a question which is somewhat misplaced, but Krishna has answered in a very beautiful manner. He has not told him anything else, but he has answered it in a very beautiful way, repeating the same thing which he has done before. So he is saying here, verse number 2, श्री भगवान बोले, कर्म संन्यास और कर्म योग ये दोनों ही परम कल्याण करने वाले हैं, परंतु इन दोनों में भी कर्म संन्यास से कर्म योग सुगम होने से ज्यादा अच्छा है. Now he has come back to that कर्म योग is better because it is not easy. कर्म संन्यास से कर्म योग बेहतर क्यों है, सुगम क्यों है? I think we have to understand that. For example, somebody retires as a monk and goes and lives in Himalayas. Now he has actually abandoned the action on the ground, but his mind is all the time in action. I told you a story in the past, and let me repeat that story. That there was a Pandit and a prostitute. They were living opposite each other. The prostitute was all the time thinking that she is doing all this, sins, and the Pandit in front is doing all the prayer of the god, and therefore, she was feeling guilty all the time, and she was thinking of that Pandit all the time. On the other hand, the Pandit was thinking all the time that this lady is enjoying all the fruits, all the life and getting a lot of money, and I am not able to, get anything out of this prayer. So when both died, the prostitute went to the Swarg and the Pandit went to the Narag, and this question was asked why this happened. And naturally, the mind of the Pandit was all the time in the prostitute's house, while the mind of the prostitute was all the time in the temple. And that is why that happened. So even if you retire to a jungle, even if you retire to Himalayas, and if your mind is all the time in the world, in your home or in the shopping center or with some other desires, then that is not really retirement. That is not karma sannyas. So karma sannyas is much more difficult in that situation. I know many people who have retired and claim to be sadhus, but they are far more deeply engaged in the world than a normal human being who is engaged in his family affairs. So karma sannyas is not easy because you can abandon the work action in what you call in physical form, but in the mental form it goes with you. You carry all that action with you wherever you go. So unless you abandon your action in your mind, the action is not actually abandoned. And that is why karma sannyas is much more difficult than the karma yoga. In karma yoga, it's easier to abandon the expectations. It's not that complicated to abandon the expectations. It is not that complicated to abandon the desires, but it is far more complicated to abandon the world itself. That is what Lord Krishna is saying here. And he's saying that कर्म संन्यास से कर्म योग ज्यादा सुगम है. Karma yoga is far easier than karma sannyas. So don't always think that these saints, we have heard many stories about many saints. We know the story of about Asharam and some others, they appear to be karma sannyasi. They appear to have taken the position of monk, but they were deeply engaged in the world. And that is where the problem arises. This is also true with a lot of Christian monks. In fact, even the Pope is here in Canada these days, and he is, seeking excuse and seeking apology of the original people of Canada, because they were greatly misused by the so-called monks of Christianity, apart from the normal human being. So this is how it happens. You see, you may acquire a robe of a monk, but it does not give you the status of a monk. The status of a monk comes only when you are able to abandon the world from your mind. The mind should be, engaged with the Almighty, not with the world. So long as your mind is engaged with the world, you are not a monk. So that is why Krishna is very clearly saying that Karm Sannyas is far more difficult than Karm Yoga. And in the next verse, he explains it even more beautifully. Hey Arjun, जो पुरुष न किसी से द्वेष करता है और न किसी की आकांक्षा करता है, वह कर्मयोगी सदा सन्यासी समझने के योग्य है. So you see, there's a word here, nitya sannyasi. Shreya se nitya sannyasi. That is the first word of this verse. Shreya se nitya sannyasi. The person who is not Shreya and Preya, these are the two words which have been used in Upanishads. Shreya basically means that you abandon all the expectations and you have no desires. That is Shreya. If you are in that status, then you are Nitya Sannyasi. All the time you are Sannyasi. So this is a wonderful explanation Krishna has given, that you are all the time Sannyasi if you are able to abandon these two things. You are not having hatred against anybody and you are not having any desire or any expectations, then you are all the time a monk. क्योंकि राग द्वेष आदि द्वंद्वों से रहित पुरुष सुखपूर्वक संसार बंधन से मुक्त हो जाता है. So you can actually become liberated from the world as soon as you are able to abandon these two things, that no expectations and dvesh, that is no hatred or jealousy against anybody. So this is what Krishna has very beautifully explained. Rather than telling Arjuna that your question is misplaced, he has explained it again in a very beautifully worded verses, saying that you will be all the time sannyasi provided you can abandon these two. Then the verse number 4, उपर्युक्त संन्यास और कर्मयोग को मूर्ख लोग पृथक पृथक फल वाला कहते हैं. Now, either the Sanskrit word is here, सांख्य योगी पृथक गबाला प्रवदंती न पंडिता. पंडित लोग ऐसा नहीं कहते, मूर्ख लोग ऐसा कहते हैं. दिस इज व्हाट ही सेड. न कि पंडित जन, क्योंकि दोनों में से एक में भी सम्यक प्रकार से स्थित पुरुष दोनों के फल रूप परमात्मा को प्राप्त होता है. So if you have done karma sannyas properly, that is, you have actually abandoned the world in your mind and then retired as a monk, then it's perfectly fine. But if the world is still in your mind and you have worn germa vastra of a monk, that doesn't mean anything at all. That is not karma sannyas. On the other hand, a person who is doing all the activities inside his house, he is living as a household person, but he has been able to distance himself from desires and expectations, then he is Nitya Sannyasi. He is all the time, he is following the what you call the basic principles of sannyas, and he is entitled to the Almighty. So he says, if any one of the person, if they have done it properly, both of them are entitled to unite with the Almighty. परमात्मा को प्राप्त हो जाता है, मतलब they can unite with the Almighty. It is called yog, to unite with the Almighty. So he has very beautifully in these three verses explained that doubt of Arjuna, which was coming out of his misunderstanding of some of the verses in the previous chapter. Now verse number 5. ज्ञान योगियों द्वारा जो परम धाम प्राप्त किया जाता है, कर्म योगियों द्वारा भी वही प्राप्त किया जाता है. इसलिए जो पुरुष ज्ञान योग और कर्म योग को फल रूप से एक देखता है, वह यथार्थ देखता है. Now he has come to the third topic here. He was talking about karma sannyas and karma yoga. Now he has come to Jnana Yoga here, which he explained in the previous chapter in the last few verses in a great detail, that ज्ञान से ज्यादा पवित्र करने वाला कोई नहीं है। ज्ञान अग्नि की तरह से है जो सब चीज को पवित्र कर देता है। तो हियर ही इज सेइंग दैट people who have acquired knowledge, those, now this word gyan, I think we have to understand it little deeper. Gyan comes from ge. Ge is the word which means the something which has gone inside you. Gyan is not reading a book. Gyan is not listening to a teacher. Gyan is not observing things. Gyan is the one which you have actually implemented in your own life, in your own action. Then it is गे. गे तभी होता है जब वो आपके एक्शन का भाग बन गया. And that is knowledge. That is ज्ञान. So once we have acquired that knowledge and put it into practice, so first we have to acquire the knowledge and then adopt it in your action, then you become jnani. Jnani doesn't mean that you have knowledge. If I have read Bhagavad Gita and I have read, Upanishads and have all the knowledge, but I have not put that into my practice, then I'm not a jnani. It's only, outside knowledge. So there's a difference between gyan and vigyan in Sanskrit. Vigyan is the one knowledge of the material things. Like vigyan today, you produce an aircraft or you produce, a light bulb, or you produce a submarine. That is vigyan because that is associated with the material world. So that is one word, vigyan. And gyan is the one which you have implemented in your own life. The third word in Sanskrit, which is called Vidya. Now, Vidya is the one which is the beginning of knowledge. You go to Pathsala or Vidyalaya, there somebody tells you the knowledge based on his experience or his reading. Now, that knowledge is not Gyan. That knowledge becomes Gyan once you take it in your own self and adopt that. It becomes part of your life, then it becomes Gyan. But the process starts with Vidya. So you acquire Vidya. So Vidya is basically like knowledge. You acquire that knowledge and then put it to practice, then it becomes Gyan. So this is what Gyan Yogi wo hoga, the person who has adopted that knowledge in his own life. So that person actually reaches the Paramdham, the ultimate abode of the Almighty. In the same way, a Karma Yogi, a person who is doing all the actions, household person who is doing all the actions, but he has abandoned all the expectations, all desire, he has no hatred for anybody else, he has no jealousy, then he is also reaching the same abode of the Almighty as the Jnana Yogi. So I think at the end, I won't like to say that these are totally different paths, because with Gyan, with knowledge, you gradually you convert your daily life into Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga can become a practice only when you have that Gyan knowledge. So the knowledge is the beginning, and then you can remain whether as a householder or you retire as a monk, but knowledge is the beginning, and then get that knowledge into your daily routine, आचरण को जिसको कहते हैं, daily conduct, then only you become ज्ञानी. So that person who has adopted that knowledge in his practical life, and the person who has done Karma Yoga in a proper way, without expectations and without desires, then they are both entitled to the abode of the Almighty. They unite with the Almighty. They reach the final stage of Samadhi or Yoga. So this is what Krishna says in verse number 5. Now, these are the two words here, Pravarti and Nivrati. Pravarti is to get engaged in the world, and Nivrati means to get out of the world. Now, get engaged in the world physically is okay. we are engaged with the world physically. But mentally, if you can get out of the world while remaining engaged physically, if you are mentally out of the world, it is Nivrati. So Nivrati could be two ways. Either you retire as monk, but also mentally you should disengage from the world. That is Nivrati. Or you remain engaged in the world, but you disengage your mind from the world, then this is also Nivrati. So Nivrati is both possible, both in the position of a monk, karma sannyasi, and also in the position of a karma yogi. So I think this is the distinction which is very clear, which has been explained by Lord Krishna in these verses. And he has used the word nitya sannyasi. Shreyas and nitya sannyasi, the person who is engaged with Shreya, he is nitya sannyasi, उसको हमेशा सन्यासी मानना चाहिए. So the person who has disengaged mentally from the world but fully engaged like Krishna himself was, then he is sannyasi. And they are both entitled to the union with the Almighty, to the abode of the Almighty. Then verse number 6, परंतु हे अर्जुन, कर्म योग के बिना संन्यास अर्थात मन, इंद्रिय और शरीर द्वारा होने वाले संपूर्ण कर्मों में कर्तापन का त्याग प्राप्त होना कठिन है. You see, he is even emphasizing even more on the karma yoga. He says, unless you do the activity of karma yoga, that is, unless you distance yourself as a doer, and unless you distance yourself from the desires and expectations, you cannot become karma sannyasi. It is not possible. So he has very clearly explained here that without proper karma yoga, you cannot become sannyasi. It's not possible. So sannyas is a reflection that the dress which we wear, the uniform which sannyasis wear, whether in Christianity or whether in Hinduism or in any other religion, that does not indicate anything. The indication is the mental disengagement from the world of expectations, from the world of desires. If you are mentally disengaged from the world, then yes, you are sannyasi all the time. So कर्म योग के बिना कर्म योग के आप संन्यास भी नहीं ले सकते, because unless your sense organs and your mind is disengaged from the world, how can you be sannyasi? You cannot be. That's not possible. So let me repeat this. कर्म योग के बिना संन्यास अर्थात मन, इंद्रिय और शरीर द्वारा होने वाले संपूर्ण कर्मों में कर्तापन का त्याग होना कठिन है. ये संभव ही नहीं है बिना कर्म योग के. और भगवत स्वरूप को मनन करने वाला कर्म योगी पर ब्रह्म परमात्मा को शीघ्र ही प्राप्त हो जाता है. So he is re-emphasizing to Arjun that karma yogi is the most important position, and that position is possible only when you disengage yourself with your mind and sense organs from the world. So that is what he says here. Then verse number 7, जिसका मन अपने वश में है, जो जितेंद्रिय एवं विशुद्ध अंतःकरण वाला है और संपूर्ण प्राणियों का आत्म स्वरूप परमात्मा ही जिसका आत्मा है, ऐसा कर्मयोगी कर्म करता हुआ भी लिप्त नहीं होता. Now this verse is very fascinating. He has used atma here in 3 places. Yog yukto visuddhatma, that is the first word here. Yog yukto visuddhatma, vijitatma jitendriya, sarvabhutatma bhutatma. Now these 3 times he has used atma here. We should understand this. Yog yukto visuddhatma. Visuddhatma means the soul which is completely purified and which is united with the Almighty. That is the meaning here of Yog Yukto Visuddhatma. The Atma which is completely, away from the sansar, which has no layer of the world on its own. So that is Visuddha Atma, which is योग युक्त है. जो योग में युक्त है वो विशुद्ध आत्मा. Vijitatma Jitendriya. Now, this is another very interesting phrase here. Unless you become Jitendriya, Jitendriya means you have conquered your sense organs and your mind. इंद्रियों के ऊपर आपने विजय प्राप्त कर ली, जीत प्राप्त कर ली. वो संभव है तब आपकी आत्मा शुद्ध होगी. Because so long as you are not able to conquer your sense organs, your mind, the soul cannot be completely purified. Because in this position we are here, this is what we call, we call it in Jivatma, in Vedic sense, it's called Jivatma. Jivatma means that this soul is interconnected with our Jiv, with the prana, which is connected with our body-mind complex. So all this is one integrated whole, one integrated system. Now, one integrated system, when it remains, it means you are engaged in the world because your sense organs and mind are engaged with the physical activities of the world. But once you are able to distinguish that, and you distinguish your soul from your mind and your sense organs, then you are able to acquire control over sense organs, and then you have what you call purification of your soul. So this is the second stage. The first stage is the ultimate, that is योग युक्त विशुद्ध आत्मा. That is आप योग में युक्त हैं, आपकी आत्मा बिल्कुल विशुद्ध है. लेकिन उसकी बिगिनिंग कैसे होगी? उसकी बिगिनिंग होगी विजित आत्मा जितेंद्रिय. तो आप विजय करेंगे अपने इंद्रियों के ऊपर, उनके ऊपर जीत करेंगे, मन के ऊपर, इंद्रियों के ऊपर. Then that is the beginning. From there we start reaching the purification of soul. And then Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma. That is means that in all the final stage is that in all the bhuts, all the physical existence, not only the living being means all species of life, plus all that is visible world, in that you are able to see the Almighty. That is the stage which arises beyond victory over sense organs and mind. So then only you are able to reach. This is the 3-stage process. The first stage is that you have control your sense organs and mind. That is Vijitatma Jitendriya. Then you look all, the Paramatma in all the entire universe. Entire universe you only look, that is what we call Paramatma ka nivas hai. Like Isavasya Upanishad says that it's पूरे संसार में परमात्मा का निवास. That is the first verse of Isavasya Upanishad. So then we start looking the world in a way that this is pervaded by the Almighty. And then the last stage, then you become Yogyukt. Then you are Visuddhatma. So this is how he has used. Then this person cannot remain limpati, means he is not engaged, not attracted by anything in the world. He becomes absolutely liberated and free. So this verse is fantastic. It explains the whole process. I will come to this also at the end of my talk today, because this question was raised and we will deal with this in a slightly different manner at the end of today's discussion. Then the verse number 8 and 9. तत्व को जानने वाला सांख्य योगी, देखता हुआ, सुनता हुआ, स्पर्श करता हुआ, सूंघता हुआ, भोजन करता हुआ, whatever activity is doing, गमन करता हुआ, सोता हुआ, श्वास लेता हुआ, बोलता हुआ, त्यागता हुआ, ग्रहण करता हुआ, आंखों को खोलता और मूंदता हुआ, सब whatever activity is doing, उन सबको समझकर ये मानता है कि मैं कुछ नहीं कर रहा. This is all happening because of the nature, because of the Almighty, because of the Paramatma. Whatever name you give, the modern people want to call it nature, but we call it Paramatma, we call it Atma, we call it, the Almighty, the Supreme. So all these activities which you are doing, whatever you are doing in your life, if you think that you are not doing, these are happening because the way the whole universe has been a construct, this is happening. And once you start thinking in that way, then you are one with the Almighty. So this verse is, I tell you, this is, for example, do we breathe? It comes automatically. Do we digest our food? Once you have taken your food inside, it automatically converts into blood and flesh and whatever is needed. We don't do anything at all. Do we have to, when we have to discharge the waste, it tells you automatically. So things happen automatically in the system. If you look at any event in your life, even if you look at of your a very important event called wedding or marriage or love. Now, if you analyze it deeply, you'll find that how that happened, how you fell in love with somebody, how you married somebody. This happens. It is not by design. It happens with a combination of thousands of factors. And that those factors operate in this srishti, in this world in such a way that you don't even know how it happened. Somebody meets an accident on the road. Now imagine how many factors work there. He left at a particular time. If he had left after 2 minutes, maybe that would not have happened. He crossed a traffic light, red light, jumped the red light. If he had not jumped, he had stopped there, perhaps the accident would not have happened. That another person who met with accident, he also had to come on the same time, on the same road, same path. There are, if you think, there are millions of factors which actually work to bring that accident on the road. So all that is happening because of the nature, the process of the srishti and srishta, which is making this process. This is happening. So if we start thinking, these two verses said that whatever we are doing, हम सूंघ रहे हैं, क्या do we really smell? It automatically smells. We don't do anything. Do we really make an effort to hear? No, the sound comes in your ear and you start hearing. So we don't do anything. It just happens in the system. The system has been designed in such a way that all these things happen. And once we start feeling that I am not the doer of any of these things, then the whole process is done. Then you are not a doer, you are not a karta. And then you become a karma yogi. Then you do whatever you want to do, but you are without the feeling of a doer. So this is what in these two verses he has given a detailed version here, that whatever you are doing, he has gone to the extent कि सुनता हुआ, देखता हुआ, all this is happening automatically. Do we see really? Who sees it? Our eyes don't see it. A dead man also has an eye. He can't see it. There is a power behind the eye. That's what Keno Upanishad says. That जो आप देख रहे हैं उसके पीछे एक देखने वाला है. He is the one who gives you power to see. आप जो मनन कर रहे हैं उसके पीछे एक मनन करने वाला है. Otherwise there is no power in the mind. So all these things are happening because of the design of the Almighty, because of the design of the Srishti. And that is what we do. We come here. It's more like, we discuss this. I don't want to use that word again. Tarunji will observe that. It's more like a puppet. But indirectly, yes, we are like a puppet. We just come here with a software in our body, in our mind, and we behave that way, throughout our life, and we continue. We can make certain changes in that. That is possible. That comes with knowledge. If we acquire better knowledge, we can change our behavior, we can change our conduct. And that is what the human beings are supposed to do, to elevate their conduct upwards so that their consciousness rises. But basically all this thing which we are doing, चाहे आप सोते हैं, क्या do you really make it? The sleep also comes on its own. We get up on our own. When the sun rises, you get up. You don't do any of these things. We presume that we are doing, and we claim that we are doing, but it doesn't. We are not the doer. It just happens. So this is what he is saying here. Ki whatever we are doing, this is all happening because of the Srasti Chakra, because of the design of the Almighty, because of the supreme force which is regulating this universe, and we are not the doer. And we will take the last verse today, and then I'll come to that question. जो पुरुष सब कर्मों को परमात्मा में अर्पण करके और आसक्ति को त्याग कर कर्म करता है, सब कर्मों को परमात्मा में अर्पण करके, we thought about that, we discussed that yajna is basically to surrender all activities to the Almighty and just presuming that you are participating in the smooth functioning of the universe. So we surrender all our actions to the Almighty, and we don't have any attachment to anything. Whatever comes, goes. वह पुरुष कमल के पत्ते की भांति पाप से लिप्त नहीं होता. You see, the kamal has been used very often in our shastras to describe certain things, and this is a beautiful example, because the kamal is actually grown in kichad. It's a very muddy stuff where it is grown. So world is muddy where we are grown, and the leaf of the flower kamal is all the time above that mud. It is not part of that mud, though it is born in the mud, it lives in the mud, but all the time above the mud. And that is what we have to do, that we are grown in this world, we are born in this world, and we are living in this world, but we have to behave like a kamal ka patta. We have to behave like a leaf of a kamal flower, which is all the time above that kichad. And therefore, if we surrender to Almighty all our actions, and if we are not attached to anything, then we will automatically become like that. So this is a beautiful verse which explains what we call the ultimate result of our conduct. If we can conduct ourselves in a better way, then we will automatically rise above this kichad and behave like a kamal ka patta. So I think that is the purpose of life. We have to slowly rise above this world, which is like a kichad. Where you remain engaged, then it is a kichad. If you can disengage, then you become like kamal ka patta. Now, I wanted to talk about this. This is a question which has been raised to me by some people, that we all the time talk about कि हम let me say that in Hindi, सब भूतों में परमात्मा को देखें और सब भूतों में परमात्मा को देखना और परमात्मा में सब भूतों को देखना. Now this phrase has come many times. परमात्मा में सब भूतों को देखना और सब भूतों में परमात्मा को देखना, ये कैसे संभव है? And this is relevant here because these verses have come, verse number 6, 7 and 5, they are referring to that part. Now, this is a 3-stage process. The first stage is that each one of us is individual, is different. You are different than me. My son is different than me. My neighbor is different than me. So we are all individual, we are different. This is the first process. And we understand that process very well because we all the time, understand that difference. We talk about individuality because of tremendous amount of ego which we have in ourselves. So the individuality, to understand that the first step, that we are different, we are distinct, We have our own personality. Everybody has his own personality. That is the first step to understand. Now, second step, though we are different, we are interdependent. We are correlated. Now, how is that? Now, I may be very wealthy person, but I cannot live on my own. Somebody, grows food which comes and I eat. Somebody cuts my hair. Somebody provides me water which I use to live my life. Somebody gives me clothing. Somebody makes my house. Somebody does the cleaning. Somebody does the cooking. Now there are thousands of services which are involved in my life, which are coming from different individuals and different sources. Not only individuals, different sources, different places. Now that is interdependence. You cannot live without those services. Those services are part and parcel of your life. So you are dependent there. You are interdependent. Those people depend on you and you depend on them. You use their services, you give them the money, salary, so they live their life. And you use their services and you live your own life. This is the physical part, interdependence of humans. It's not only humans, it's also, in the modern science, we call it ecosystem. In the past, we always say that man and nature are connected. Prakriti and Purush, they are intimately connected. And we also believe that our body is made of Panch Tattva, which is Prakriti. So this is how, our science is very integrated, Shastraj. So we are not only interdependent amongst humans, we are interdependent all other species of life. Like we were talking about soil. Now, the soil is not made by us. It is made by a large number of bacteria, large number of insects, large number of birds, which make this soil, which becomes fertile and where we grow our food. So there are all kinds of ecosystems. Now you ask a scientist who deals with ecosystem in the modern world, he will tell you that ecosystem makes us survive, otherwise we will not survive. For examples, how do we get our oxygen? The plants give our oxygen and the plants consume our carbon dioxide. If that ecosystem is not there, how will we survive? We will not. So the whole world is interdependent. Now look at the sun. Sun is, I don't know, a few billion kilometers away from us. But as soon as it sets, the night comes and we can't see much and we start feeling sleepy. And as soon as the sun rises from those, billions of kilometers away, we get up because of that. We can see things and the activity starts. Not only that, the entire pranic system in the body runs with the sun. The food we digest, the air, which is going inside the body with the pranic energy. So the whole world, look at the water cycle, how it provides us fresh water, the rivers and the lakes. The water rises from the ocean beds with the heat of the sun, and then with the winds, the clouds go away in different parts of the world, and then again with the condensation process, it rains or snows and it comes down in the form of glaciers or in the form of rivers or in the form of lakes and the fresh water supply. So the whole world is interconnected. So that is the second step to understand that we are individual, we have our personality, we are different, but at the same time we are interconnected, not only with the humans, with the rest of the nature. Without that nature, our life is not possible. We are made of that nature, we are made of those five elements. So all that life is interconnected. That is the second stage to understand. And the third stage, which is the ultimate stage, which has come in these verses, is that ultimately it is only an illusion that we see multiplicity. It is only one force which appears as multiple forces. It's only one which appears in different forms. The unity getting transformed into multiplicity. For example, now we have this laptop. We have made these materials and this laptop, electricity. All this has come from the same elements which Earth has provided. These existed before, but it was not visible till these inventions, these discoveries happened. So discoveries can happen. The material can be transformed into one form into another, but it is the same material ultimately. You have different ornaments from the gold, but the gold is the same. Similarly, the earth and minerals which is forming part of the earth is the same one entity from where all kinds of materials come, and we make all kinds of things out of that. We make, for example, the fiber optic which is used in variety of ways. Now that is coming from the same earth, same materials. So it is one particular unity which is appearing into what you call diversity in different forms. So that is the ultimate knowledge, that we are all one, but we appear different. It's exactly the way, as I explained now, you have a space. In this space, you construct one house, you demolish that house, the space goes back to the space. You can construct a toilet or a warehouse or a shopping mall. You call it shopping mall, you call it toilet, you can call it bedroom. It's all space, it's nothing but space. It's one single entity which has been converted into multiple entities. So, this is the final knowledge which we should reach after the three stages, that we are distinct, we are different, then we are interdependent, we are correlated, and then it is only one single entity which appears in multiple forms. Like body is one single entity, but we have eyes which is so different, we have ears which are so different, we have nose which is so different, we have mouth which is so different. Can you say the mouth is not body? Mouth is also part of body. Our hands, our fingers, they are so different, but they are part of the same entity called body. So this is the ultimate knowledge, and I'll quote Swami Vivekanand here. I have a quote from him. I'll read it out, which is very beautifully explained this whole process. Everything here in this sense, world, in this sense, word, sorry, not word, world, is dependent and interdependent, dependent and interdependent, relative and correlative, the existence of one depending on the other. There are three steps, therefore, in our knowledge of things. The first thing is that each thing is individual and separate from each other. And the next step is to find out that there is a relation and correlation between all things that exist in this world. And the third is that there is only one thing which we see as many. Now, this is also a question of oneness. These days, the in Nordic countries they have a concept called oneness. Oneness means that whole thing is interconnected. This one single entity, this whole universe, and this is what we have to arrive at. Once we reach there, then we will see everywhere Paramatma, and we will see everybody in the Paramatma. So we will see Paramatma in everybody, and we will see everybody in Paramatma. That is possible once we reach the third stage in this process of knowledge. So I think thank you very much for today's session. Despite the change in time, I'm thankful to all of you for joining me, and despite the inconvenience. Thank you.